And hello, everyone. Let me welcome you with a warm welcome to our call this morning. We have people calling from around the globe in different time zones. My name is John Thomas. I'm the Humanities Team Conscious Business Program Coordinator, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Living in Oneness 5 Pillars for Success Summit. Today is the day 10 of the summit, and we have a fantastic program lined up for you and have over 16,000 registered participants, and that number continues to climb. So what is this summit all about? We come from, it's all about coming fully alive as part of the divine and experiencing that in our lives. And we live in a culture where most people live under the delusion of being separate from the divine. So these sessions are all about waking up to that our innate nature of the divinity, and so we can live to our fullest potential and share our gifts with all of humanity. That's what this summit's all about. And I'm excited about today's call with Hazel Henderson. We're going to explore the experience of living in oneness in our everyday lives with a focus on the workplace and the bigger arena of business and the economy. Hazel is a brilliant and inspiring leader in this area. So we're in for a real treat this morning. But before I begin, I wanted to acknowledge our audience and thank you for joining us today, whether you're on the phone or on the webcast, perhaps listening to this session as an audio replay. I also want to remind all of you that there is a $100 discount on all of the upgrade packages offered during the summit. And these upgrade packages allow you to listen again and again to the wisdom being presented at the summit and share these many gems with your friends and family. These packages include MP3 links, written digital transcripts, and CDs of the over 30 presenters in this year's summit. And Humanities Team's also including at no extra cost all the content from last year's program, including sessions with Ken Wilber, Irvin Laszlo, Panache Desai, and many others. So we encourage your comments and questions, any aha moments you have during the session. You can post them right on Lori Hyland's page in the summit website, which is livingin1.com/speakers/Hazel-Henderson. Or you can enter those comments in the Q&A section of the webcast. Dee Meyer and Nanette Kennedy are producing the call today, so I want to thank you, Dee and Nanette. And for those of you on the webcast, when you enter questions, mention your name and where you're listening from. And thanks, Dee and Nanette, for bringing those questions from the webcast onto our screens. And we'll try to answer at least a few of these questions. I had the pleasure of meeting Hazel last fall and on a panel, The New Bottom Line for Business, which Humanities Team hosted as part of the Global Oneness Day. And so it's really an honor for me to be able to interview Hazel today. Hazel, you are well known to many, but for our listeners who may not know you, let me take a few minutes and recap some of your impressive accomplishments, and I will summarize some of this. So you can see Hazel's full bio on the Living in Oneness, her Living in Oneness Summit page. But some highlights. Hazel Henderson is the founder of Ethical Markets Media and the creator and co-executive producer of its TV series. She's a world-renowned futurist, evolutionary economist, a worldwide syndicated columnist, and a consultant on sustainable development. She is the author of a number of books, Ethical Markets, Growing the Green Economy, published in 2006, won the Axiom and Nautilus Awards, and she's published 8 other books. She's also co-edited a number of publications for UN Global Policy and other topics. Hazel's editorials appear in 27 languages and 200 newspapers. Her articles have appeared in over 250 journals, including Harvard Business Review, New York Times, Christian Science Monitor, some of the publications in the U.S., and numerous journals in Europe, Latin America, and Asia. Her books are translated in 8 languages, and she sits on a number of prominent editorial boards. Since becoming a full-time TV producer, Hazel has stepped down from her many board memberships of leading foundations, non-governmental organizations, and institutions. And you can read these. It's an impressive list on her bio. She has been a dynamo of being involved in so many areas. She's collaborated with the Calvert Group by bringing them her country futures indicators, which is now being carried forward by Ethicals Market, and we hope to discuss that later. In addition to everything I've mentioned, Hazel has been a Regents Lecturer at the University of California, Santa Barbara, held a Horace Albright Chair in Conservation in the University of California, Berkeley, and advised the U.S. Office of Technology Assessment and the National Science Foundation from 1974 to 1980. She holds honorary doctorate of science degrees from the University of San Francisco, Soho University in Tokyo, Worcester Polytech Institute in Massachusetts. She's an active member of the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., the World Future Society, a fellow of the World Future Studies Federation, and a member of the Association for Evolutionary Economics. Hazel has many awards and is listed in the Who's Who USA, Who's Who in the World, Who's Who in Business and Finance, Who's Who in Science and Technology. She's an honorary member of the Club of Rome. She shared the 1996 Global Citizens Award with the Nobelist A. Perez Esquivel of Argentina. And in 2007, she was elected to a fellow of Britain's Royal Society of Arts. And in 2010, she was honored as one of the top 100 thought leaders and trustworthy business behavior 2010 by Trust Across America. Hazel, and forgive me, I've left out some of your background. Again, I encourage everyone to take a look at her full bio on the Living in Oneness page. So Hazel, let's.
Well, thank you, John.
Yeah, no, it's so impressive to see the breadth and scope of all the things you've been doing, and I was impressed by that when we met last fall on the New Bottom Line for Business panel. So I'd love to go into some of the things we just mentioned. You clearly have a very comprehensive picture of the world, a big heart, and the courage to tackle issues. Some of the big issues around how does business evolve towards oneness. And you speak of oneness in business as businesses that focus on profit and people and the planet, so not just on profit. And again, I'd love to get into some of these topics and questions with you.
All right.
So to begin, if you don't mind, I'd love to start with a more personal question, which is, how did you get to, what brought you to this focus, to this purpose in life? Can you share with us if there was a pivotal event or an epiphany, or, what set you in this direction?
Well, thank you, John. It's a real privilege to be with you on this program again. And I really began, I think, the way most children do, and that is feeling that kind of oneness. I mean, I grew up in a small town in Britain, and basically my parents were both very strict atheists. And in a way, that's a very intellectually rigorous way to start inquiring about one's purpose and what was I doing on this beautiful planet. So the thing that happens when you have two parents like that is that everything you're taught from nursery school onward, they would challenge, And so you learned that you had to really kind of verify everything you were being told. And so I pretty soon found that I knew that I and all humans had a spark of divinity within us, and that we were actually part of the whole cosmos. And lying in the grass as a kid, and looking up at the sky and the clouds, I just felt so at home, on the earth and being part of it. So it all kind of came rather naturally to me, and it meant really that the usual kind of education. I went to a girls' school where we learned how to arrange flowers, we learned Latin and languages and biology and all of that, but luckily I wasn't channeled too narrowly into any specialty, and I left school when I was 16, so I never went to college. And now I look back on it and think, gosh, this is really great. I saved myself 4 years, and I didn't have any student debt. And I ended up now, with 4 honorary PhDs.
Wow.
So I feel like I kind of sort of beat the system in that way. And the wonderful thing was that I was able to explore the universe in following my own passion and my own interests. So I explored all of the religious traditions, looking for, I found that they all had this core, of the golden rule, and the idea that we all had a little spark of the divine within us. And that was really all I needed to know. I didn't particularly want to deal with any of the particular liturgies or anything like that. And so I sort of, I became extremely interested when I left Britain and I ended up in New York City in the 60s. The first thing I did after I became a U.S. citizen was to start a group with the other mothers in the play park where I had my little daughter by that time. And we started a group called Citizens for Clean Air. And that was such an education, having to learn about what the junk was in the atmosphere, and learning about all of the players in the game, the electric utilities and the automobiles and all of the companies that were producing the pollution, and all of the politics of it. And so it was like unraveling a big ball of wool. And sort of I ended up with realizing, oh gosh, you can't clean the air without being worried about the water. And finally, there I was, living on planet Earth, and realizing that it was an entire whole system. So I went into really, I worked with Ralph Nader, and I began to engage with corporations very much as a critic. And then I decided, after many years of that and writing books and articles on corporate social responsibility, by the 1980s, the Calvert Group that had a mutual fund investing only in clean, green kind of companies, with no military and all of that, and they invited me to be an advisor. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I did that for 24 years until I left to start Ethical Markets. So there's the short.
Wow, what an exciting and how interesting to me that, raised by atheist parents with this very sort of strict intellectual discipline, that deep inquisitive mind led you into really that innate oneness, recognizing that innate oneness and seeing that innate essence in all the world religions. So that's beautiful. And I imagine that informed all of the sort of activist work you do.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I know it's interesting when I hear people like you that bring that perspective and spark to political activism. It's that holding of the ability to hold compassion and detachment at the same time, being really inspired and active is an exciting quality.
Oh, it's interesting because, I did end up with lots and lots of Buddhist friends. And although I don't really subscribe to any particular religious tradition, very much an agnostic, but I do hang out with Buddhists a lot. And I like their whole approach. There's actually no deity, and you're fundamentally responsible for your own worldview and all of that. And I really like that a lot. And the sort of attachment, detachment that they practice, where you passionately go into, what you believe in and your goal and your purpose, but you let go of outcomes.
Yeah.
And that's so, that releases you and releases your energy to stay real time. Go on to the next thing, not hanging on to anything, and, you're not sort of measuring your own performance.
Yeah.
You just, keep on trucking and keep on searching for new opportunities, to make a difference.
Yeah, so true. And an ability to stay out of polarization with others. I always think of the Dalai Lama, who is able to refer to the Chinese government as my friends, the enemy.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, I remember being in Costa Rica back in the 1980s with President Oscar Arias, who's then the president, and the Dalai Lama, and we were at a peace conference there in San Jose, and we went off for half a day, and we were sitting around having lunch, and basically it was just after Tiananmen Square, the thing that was happening in Beijing, and it was really awful. And I had been going to China at the invitation of the State Council there for some time previous to that, and they had invited me back to co-chair a conference on what I kept on referring to as leapfrog, let's don't make all the mistakes we've made in the West, but leapfrog to the green technologies and all of that. And so I asked the Dalai Lama, what should I do? Should I actually go back there? Where a lot of my friends were saying, oh no, how could you possibly go back there and co-chair this conference, which is going to be in Shanghai? And the Dalai Lama said, oh, no, absolutely go,
That's beautiful.
Dialogue is so important. So I went,
Well, that's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. I was curious to take ask a different question here that deals with a little bit of what we're up against. So I find many people, when we talk about this area of activism that you've been so involved in, many are, and corporations becoming about profit, people, and planet, that many people are skeptical that corporations can have that focus when the pressure on profit from Wall Street is for quarter-to-quarter earnings. It's so intense.
Yes.
And what would you say to people that are skeptical about that?
I would tell them to keep their skepticism, because this whole thing, is very much a matter of monitoring their, whatever their pronouncements are. And I would say it's really people and planet come first. Profit it should be the residual if they do the right thing. But there's so much greenwashing now, and the fact that they're all kind of jumping on board with the rhetoric, sustainability and blah blah blah. And yet, if it weren't for people like Bill McKibben and all the students who have the 350.org organization that are now stressing the asset managers, because really corporations are puppets of finance. It shouldn't be that way, but it is right now. We've had this global financialization where, it sort of would deregulate everything. And, of course, we know how that crashed the economy in 2008. And the reverberations of that are still going on. But basically, the asset managers now, and this is what we are doing at Ethical Markets right now, is we are looking for these choke points preventing the transition, which is going on all over the world, but that are trying to slow and block the transition to the cleaner, greener, more ethical, equitable economy that we all know is the next stage of human evolution.
Yeah.
And so you have to be really, really on guard. And so we are very supportive of the groups who have been stressing their university endowments to say, look, divest from fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm.
We just had a conference here last week with about 40 pioneer asset managers who have created fossil-free portfolios, which actually perform exactly the same or slightly better than portfolios that have these dirty energy companies in them, oil, coal, natural gas. And so basically, you have to keep your eyes wide open and not only look and monitor the performance of corporations, but also stress those asset managers and those security analysts that are just looking only at the single bottom line. Did the company make more money each quarter? Mm-hmm. And so we're very involved, too, in all the new metrics. And there's all of these new indicators now and new accounting standards which have come to the right conclusion, and that is that there are actually 6 forms of capital, only one of which is money.
Oh, wow.
The others are built capital, land and buildings, and then there's social capital, and that is all of our associations and organizations, and then there's human capital, and then there's intellectual capital, and of course natural capital, the capital of nature, natural resources. So as these new metrics are becoming widespread now, all of those asset managers are actually having to be retrained. And that's what most of our work is now. And we have the Green Transition Scoreboard to help them understand that when they divest from those fossil fuels, which they're beginning to do now, we have to steer them to the right investments in the green economy, because if you just tell them to divest, then they're likely to say, oh, okay, well, we'll shift our assets from Exxon to Monsanto. And we have to say, no, that's not what we meant at all.
Right.
And so that's why we have the Green Transition Scoreboard, to show them all of the companies they can invest in.
That's exciting. And you've been so active and such a leader in this whole area of socially responsible and investing, and it only makes sense that this is some very big power that we have as citizens on the planet, is where we put the money, where we put
Absolutely.
our money. It has a big impact.
And it's wonderful that the students know that they now can teach their professors, and they can teach the asset managers who are managing their college's endowment. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're doing, They're saying not only divest of fossil fuels, and here's all the companies that are already doing this quite successfully, but here's where you can shift your investments to. And, there's a concept that I like to use a lot, which comes out of some of the new brain science. And that's the idea that there's something we humans are always up against, and that is theory-induced blindness. And right now, most economists are suffering from theory-induced blindness. And since those economic models also drive the financial models and the way all these asset managers were taught at the Harvard Business School, places like that, we now, they are running on that old model. And it's like backing into the future, looking through the rearview mirror. So theory-induced blindness, there's a lot of that. Right now we're going through this very, very rapid transition on this planet from the fossil-fueled industrial era to what I call the solar age. And it's just speeding up now because of all of the interconnectedness and because we have satellites and the internet and all of the social media. This transition is accelerating quite rapidly. And so that leaves most of the academic institutions, the departments of economics and finance, kind of about 10 years behind the times. So that's why it's very important, if you notice that these conferences are going on, like the one we had here last week, which we call Finding Ethical Alpha, which is what financial people talk about alpha as, how you can beat the other guy at the performance of your portfolio. And so basically, all over the world, these meetings are going on now about socially responsible investing, shifting your assets from fossil fuels to the green economy. And so that's where the learning is going on. It's not going on in departments of economics at Harvard or Stanford or anywhere else.
Oh, that's exciting in that you've been able to have such a direct influence on that through ethical markets media. It's been great.
Well, it's very exciting.
I wanted to ask you, Hazel, if I could, you mentioned a little bit before these new measures and new metrics, and that's just basic to reality and certainly to business, that if you want to change anything that you care about, you have to change how you measure it. And you've been quite vocal about the problem with GNP, gross national product, the way we measure our economy, leaves out all these other forms of capital you mentioned, land, social, natural, and so forth, and develop your country's futures indicators, which for a while I know you were collaborating with the Culbert Group to move that forward. And that comprehends a much more holistic view of the economy and the world. And I wonder if you could say more about that.
Well, that's been a great journey for me, and it began, amazingly enough, with our little citizens group in New York City, where I didn't know, very much about anything except that the air was dirty and my kid was breathing it, And so when our Citizens for Clean Air group back in the 60s, I said, well, look, it's obvious to me that the gross national product, or gross domestic product, was totally based on money, is measuring all the goods, and it doesn't subtract the bads. And the bads are like pollution, and all kinds of other social problems created by the, capitalist system as it was, and in many places still is. And so we got our senator, who at that point was the late Senator Robert Kennedy, who had just become our senator in New York City, and we took him on a helicopter ride around New York to show him the pollution. And we said, we need you to talk about how the gross national product needs to be corrected and overhauled so that we subtract all the bads, like this pollution that we're showing you here. There were all of the smokestacks and everything. And of course, it's all history now. Robert Kennedy went on the following year, 1968, and he gave this impassioned speech at the University of Kansas, talking about the GDP and the GNP and saying it measures everything except what makes us really proud to be human beings. It doesn't talk about, the love of our children or the beauty of our environment, and it leaves out all the things that are really most important to human beings. And that speech of his really launched the whole re-examination of GDP, which has been going on for the last almost 30 years. And I've been very involved in that. You know, it came up in 1992 at the Rio Earth Summit, and I collaborated with a group in Brazil when President Lula came into power, and we had a conference in 2003 in Curitiba called the First International Conference on Implementing the New Indicators of Quality of Life. And by that time, Calvert and I had developed this prototype. And then we brought the people from Bhutan who had the gross national happiness. And
Right.
of course, the press loved that. And from that point, it really took off. And you'll find on our website, there's a page called Beyond GDP. And people can check out all of the new indicators, and they are all over the world. There's the Better Life Index, you know, that comes out of the OECD in Paris. You know, that's the club of all the rich countries. There's the Canadian Index of Well-Being. The Brits are doing one based on that. And so everybody's in on this now.
It seems to me inevitable. It's just so fundamental to the change in paradigm and the shift in consciousness that's happening. And how exciting that you could have been at the forefront and sparking that. And what a golden moment it must have felt like when you heard Robert Kennedy give that speech.
Oh, yes.
Yay.
What a thrill.
Inspiring.
It really was.
Yeah, it seems that is definitely going to happen and come about. I wonder if we could, Hazel, shift the gears a little bit and talk about, on a personal level. I mean, certainly that work is on a grand scale is how do we change the way the planet and governments and economy looks at the economy. But on a personal level, we also, as we've talked about in some of our segments, like we had a great segment the other day with Lori Highland where we talked about the quantum economy and the new reality of money. And you've done a lot of work in shifting how we think about money and our relationship to money. And you helped produce and feature a full-length documentary, The Money Fix, which explores our relationship to money and alternative money systems that could solve many of our problems. And I think this affects all of us. You know, a lot of where people feel most constricted and in fear is in relation to money and and how
very much so. Yes.
Yeah. So could you talk a little bit about that? How does money relate to living in oneness?
Well, it's an absolute fundamentally important deep dive into many of the systems that we are now in the process of changing. And so we did that 1-hour special on the politics of money creation. And the first half of that show is really to help people understand how money is created. Actually, where some, in many countries now, pretty much all over the world, having been led by the Federal Reserve Board, which started in the U.S. in 1913, where the biggest banks got together and realized that the sort of unfettered capitalism that they were doing was leading to all of these booms and busts and panics and everything else. And so they got together to try to create a kind of stabilization process, and in so doing, unfortunately, they turned over the sovereign process of creating a country's money supply, which in our Constitution said that the government shall coin the money of a country. But what they did was turned it over to the private banks. And so the banks actually create most of our money simply out of thin air. So that if you go to a bank and ask for a mortgage on a house or something like that, and you qualify, they will simply put that $100,000 or whatever it is that you wanted to borrow. They'll just make an entry in your account, $100,000, boom, and then they carry it on their books, and that is the way our money is created. And the point is that governments, we now know, because of after the 2008 crash, we realized too that governments print money, and there's really see, money is just a unit of account. Money is a certain kind of information. It has no value. Money simply is the tracking and the scoring system whereby we track the really valuable activities of human entrepreneurs getting together and forming new enterprises, new inventions in relation to the Earth's natural resources, which are also the other part of the value. And that's how we've gotten to this understanding now that there are really 6 forms of capital, and money isn't really a form of capital at all. It's a scoring system. So the other half of our show is about how people are creating their own local currencies. And the reason that that's so important is because if the national government is printing money, as our Fed has been doing, in order to give it to their friends on Wall Street, we have to figure out, okay, how can we create our own money to keep the value of all the activities in our community from being sucked out of our system as they would be, by the national currency. And so having a local currency means that you've got dollars in one pocket for things that you can't get locally, but you have a local currency in the other pocket. And the best example is that of my friend Susan Witt up there in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, who has the Berkshires, which are different kinds of notes, banknotes. They're absolutely beautiful, and the 6 local banks there take them, and all the local merchants take them, and that keeps a lot of the value of the local enterprises, the local farmers market, the local community housing, the local solar energy companies, and all of that, keeps it there in the town of Great Barrington. So partly what we're doing now is we're all learning this very, very deep meme. It's really like the cultural DNA strand that we had to understand if we were going to unravel the bad parts of our capital markets and steer them in a healthier direction.
That makes so much sense, and kind of exciting to me. Even here in Portland, you go to the local farmers markets, all use the little wood coin that $5 denominations, and it's its own currency. That it's a small example of that, and it's great. The whole transition towns movement. That's about relocalizing the economy. That's, I know, a big focus of them that they've had it around. Creating these local currencies.
Yes, they very much grew out of Schumacher College. E.F. Schumacher, who wrote the book Small is Beautiful. I helped to bring him over here in 1975 when I was at the U.S. Office of Technology Assessment, and he had a lecture tour in the U.S., and it was just amazing. And after that book, became an international bestseller, the Brits started a college called Schumacher College, which is still running there in Britain, founded and run by my friend Satish Kumar, who is an Indian, originally of the Jain religion, but there again, totally a global citizen. That was how the money, all of these alternative currencies, began to grow in Britain, as well as the transition town movement. That all came out of Schumacher College.
Yeah, that's so exciting to hear all these amazing people that you've had a chance to meet and work with, Hazel. I wanted to also bring in a comment that's coming in from EAN from Henderson, Nevada. If I could just share just here. She says that, or he or she says that the corporations are too big to fight. The only way to displace them is with a better system. It is not so much what we do, it's the manner in which we do it. We must outnumber them, not only in number, which is already a given, but in the power and passion we put into displacing them with the new and real values and paradigm.
That's such a beautiful statement that I just want to fully endorse it and thank our friend from Nevada. Beautiful.
Yeah. I think, and so much of the work you do and the work that we've been seeing in all these various sessions and Living in Oneness Summit, whether it comes from the field of science or the economy and business, or the way we live our lives, where we're putting these people and planet values ahead of profit, is so fundamental to changing, to fueling this whole transformation.
Yeah.
So this is actually kind of leads me to another question I'd love to ask you. It's more open-ended, but it seems, as I look at your work, Hazel, it's so inspiring, and it's very clear to me you were destined to sort of work in this global arena. And I think some people may be listening to this and going, well, that's Hazel Henderson, and I just have my little sphere of life, and it makes me reflect on how each of us can actually distill from your experience learning and an approach that's really relevant, no matter what role we play, no matter how large or small our arena or our circumstances in life. So I would ask you, what would you say to people who are listening who feel drawn to bring this greater experience of oneness, let's say in the workplace, since we've been talking about money and the economy, but bring that greater experience of oneness into the workplace if they feel they're maybe in a position where they can't make a difference?
Well, of course, we are, each one of us, so incredibly powerful. If we really tune in to our deepest purpose and we act on our intentions. And there was a phrase that I used to use a lot from the great biologist René Dubos, and he used to say, think globally and act locally. And, of course, most of us now are living in an era where we grew up with those images of the beautiful blue planet from space. And that really is the image, I think, in the heads of all of us who are doing local currencies, farmers markets, transition towns. All of this activity is precisely because we have a picture in our minds of that beautiful blue planet, the oneness. And it reminds us that we're all members of one species. And all of the research, DNA researchers and all of the rest of it, they find that the interpenetration of DNA that all of us humans have, we are all totally mixtures. We came out of Africa, and there's a book I was just reading called DNA USA. Mm-hmm. And everybody in the U.S. has some African American DNA, some Asian DNA, some European DNA. And, let's get over it. We are one family. And that means that we have a way of connecting with our neighbors around our local community, but with the vision of the whole planet and the whole human species. And so I think that those two ideas, are so coterminous they can't be separated. The global and the local, are totally. I mean, that's another part of the oneness. And you may. I think I mentioned to you, John, that I have a new ebook which just came out, where I am looking at what all of these Earth-orbiting satellites are doing now, observing what's really going on our home planet and what we humans are doing to it. And it's called Mapping the Global Transition to the Solar Age, which is really where we're all going, which is robust, local, homegrown economies all over the planet, and all linked by the new media and the new social networks and the new television and means of communication with each other. That's always been my vision. And so basically, I would love to make that ebook available free to anybody who would like to download it and take a look at it.
That's wonderful. We would, Humanities team would love to take you up on that offer and extend that to the people that have been registered here. And what a fabulous idea, and I look forward to reading that book, Hazel. I wanted to share, actually while we're talking, just a quick comment on this coming from Michelle in Arles, France. She says, money is a scoring system. Aha, I totally get it. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback.
And if you have a little more time, I welcome our listeners to submit any questions for Hazel. And I really just want to continue a little on with what you were just saying. One of a couple of the examples you used, that the think globally, act locally, is such a powerful intention for our time. And as I think about that, with the level of connectivity that we have, that what happens locally can so often go viral and become a global phenomena.
Yes.
I'm thinking a while back of one of the big demonstrations against Monsanto for the whole GMO issue started, and I forget the woman's name, but it was very much a local event that just went global. And so I just think this is we live in such an amazing time, as we, of course, have the connectivity of the Internet, but we also have this inner connectivity of oneness, where we are, where this is the culture of awakening beings around the planet. We're focusing so much, as both Steve McIntosh talked about, the beautiful, the true, and the good. So those are just things and as I look at your life, it's true, you've been working at this big global level, and yet there's so many examples of these small local acts that not only affect the immediate environment, but then go global.
Oh yes, and I mean I have, in my book on ethical markets, growing the green economy, I just love to showcase all of these wonderful startups wherever they are in the world. And one of the things that I started back about 10 years ago when I started Ethical Markets Media is an award called the Ethic Mark Award for advertising that uplifts the human spirit and society, and basically our potentials for the future. And we're now in our 8th year, and we give this award in the for-profit and the non-profit categories, and we always give it at the big SRI conference of all the asset managers and company people that takes place in the Rockies every year for the last 20 years. And the last one we gave out was so that these awards were just, they were ads that were so beautiful and so inspiring. And the one in the for-profit was to Philips, the electronics company in Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. And they had solar-powered village lighting systems with all LED lights. Mm-hmm. And that one, the for-profit and the non-profit was totally mind-bending, and it was the Technical University of Peru. And for their billboards, now you wouldn't think really that billboards were a very nice thing, but all along the highway in this very arid area of Peru, these billboards actually were composed of chemical substances which are called reverse osmosis. And it's a way that you can collect all of the early morning moisture and fog that came into those areas but never fell as rain. And it was collected by these billboards which advertised the university, and it precipitated down into containers, and all the local villages along that highway collected their fresh water from these billboards. Now, who would have thought that advertising could do something like that?
Yeah, that's so beautiful, and it's so needed. Think of the power of advertising if what you're calling forward is, earth conscious and
yes. And actually, John, I would like to tell everybody who's on in this, please send us nominations. We're getting nominations for these wonderful kind of unusual advertising campaigns from all over the world, and our nomination process is open right now on our website at ethicalmarkets.com. And if you know of an ad that you think is just unbelievably inspiring, please nominate it, and we can put it in the running for our 8th annual award.
That's great. And I have to go look, and I'm embarrassed I don't remember the name of the company, but there's a Korean company. One of their ads went viral, and it shows this young man doing compassionate things in many aspects of his life, and it's
please
very
nominate
unusual
it.
Ad, and I'll look for it.
Yes, we would love you to nominate it.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much. So we have about 5 more minutes before we need to start moving into the wrap up. We're actually about 3 or 4 minutes here, and we have covered a lot of really good ground. I invite anyone online that wants to submit another question. But
can I just mention something that I'm passionate about right now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, what I'm working on now is desert greening. And on this planet, there are growing desert areas, but actually we have 4 incredibly abundant resources that can provide food and fiber and edible oils for our growing population, even if the population keeps growing. And they are desert land, sunshine, salt water, and 10,000 varieties of salt-loving plants. And this is called saltwater agriculture. And these salt-loving plants, they have been doing research on how they can grow all the food and the oils that humans need on desert areas irrigated with seawater. And most of the experiments are going on, of course, in the Mideast, but also in China and in Mexico. And last week we had 2 of the most important desert greening scientists were here with us and showing us how this can ramp up very quickly because, of all the water on this planet, only 3% is fresh water. And we have been investing all of our attention on that 3%. And of course the agricultural land, which is diminishing all the time, and the 97% of water that we're not paying attention to is all of this saltwater lakes, brackish areas, and so in our Green Transition Scoreboard, which we just brought out in February, I titled it "Plenty of Water." And it's all about how we can now use these desert areas and grow all the food that we need by greening deserts.
That's so exciting, Hazel. You remind me of Bucky Fuller.
Well, I know Bucky Fuller. We were friends.
All these ways that are,
what a dear man.
Oh, he so inspired me, and I think what you're pointing to is so inspiring to me because for all the reasons, food being obvious, sourcing of food, but also what's happening with the desertification of many parts of the world. This could have, I think, a direct carbon impact too, right?
Oh, absolutely, because you see, it can also sequester carbon. These plants sequester carbon very well, and they are now hybridizing these kind of plants so that they have analogs of corn, wheat, soybeans, all of the grains and the vegetables, and you'll find all of this in our Green Transition Scoreboard. We have an access to an article that was done 10 years ago on all of this in Scientific American with lovely pictures of all of these plants and what they do. And so, my view is that it's breakdowns that drive breakthroughs, and that evolution and stress, stress is really evolution's tool. And if we weren't stressed, we wouldn't evolve. And so we have created so many unsustainable systems and sectors all over the world that are now crashing and collapsing left or right, including the financial system, that's why suddenly, even though I've been writing about desert agriculture and using seawater, I've been writing about it for 25 years. But now we have business plans, and people are saying, well, hey, why don't we just go and do this?
So exciting. Hazel, I'm really glad you introduced this last one. This is one that personally I will want to follow up on. And so we're kind of at the end of our time. I want to do a couple things. I want to share a comment that just came in. Again, this is Michelle from France. Thank you, Hazel, for the ebook. I can't wait to read it. I was not sure if your talk would interest me, but it is fascinating in all caps. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And Michelle is speaking for all of us. I really thank you. It's always a delight to hear you, and today was especially exciting for me and for many of us. So I want to have a couple of things to say before I wrap up, but Hazel, before we sign off with you, how can people, what's the best way to get more information about you? What's the best site to go to?
Just go to Ethical Markets, that's all one word, plural, ethicalmarkets.com, and to watch all of our TV shows, including our series on transforming finance and the Money Fix, that's ethicalmarkets.tv. And if you're a professor and you want to use these programs in your classwork, you'll find them all at www.films.com, and they're available for classrooms.
That sounds great. And for those, so we're going to Humanity's team will make your ebook available, but if in the meantime anyone wants to go look for that, is there a place they can do that?
Oh, yes. What I'll do, John, it's on our home page at ethicalmarkets.com, but I will send you a precise link so people can download it and read it and pass it on. It was published in London by their Institute of Chartered Accountants, would you believe? See, that's how far we're getting with all of this. And so they are making it available to, many thousands of accountants around the world and politicians. So I want everybody on this call to be able to read it too.
Great. So thank you. Ethicalmarkets.com and ethicalmarkets.tv. So much. I have to thank you again, Hazel, and just to sign off for everybody, I want to thank all our listeners, and a couple of closing things. I want to remind all our listeners that, again, think of those upgrade packages. You can take advantage of the $100 discount during the summit, and that will end after the end of the summit on Sunday. Also, coming up in 30 minutes, be sure to join back in, dial back in. We have another session from 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific time with Gay and Kathleen Hendricks. That will be hosted by Steve Farrell. And you can, we're going to run out of time here, but you can check Kathleen, the CEO and Director of Training for the Hendricks Institute. And Gay Hendricks is the author of over 30 books. And